If that is what he said, I want someone to tell him birds eat ants.
Back in 2024, Anthony Edwards shook the whole basketball world with one comment that had fans, players, and legends going crazy online.
I don't think anybody in this generation could have played like 20 years ago, if I'm being 100.
During an interview, Ant claimed that players from the older NBA eras didn't really have much skill outside of Michael Jordan. The problem? He admitted he barely even watched those games himself. That instantly turned the conversation into chaos because former players were not about to let that slide. And now, 2 years later, Larry Bird finally answered back in a recent interview. Once people heard Bird's response, the internet exploded again. Some fans are even saying this could become one of the biggest reality checks of Anthony Edwards' career. The wild part is Ant confidently spoke on an era he openly admitted he didn't study much. That's like somebody reviewing a movie after only watching random clips online instead of the full thing.
You at the three-point competition, walking in the locker room, who's playing? Did you really say that? Who's playing for second?
Yeah, I did. I was so bad.
But then Larry Bird entered the chat, and he didn't just disagree politely. He delivered a cold response that instantly had basketball fans talking everywhere. Anyone who Bird knows he wasn't just an all-time player, he was one of the greatest trash talkers the league has ever seen. So when Bird reportedly said, "Bird eats ants, ane?" people immediately understood the message loud and clear. It wasn't just a joke, it was a statement. The comparison hit hard because Bird built his reputation on backing up every word he said. Fans took it as Bird basically saying the older generation would overpower players who underestimate them. And when you actually go back and look at the numbers, the debate gets even crazier. Take Bird's 1987 to 88 season, for example. The man averaged nearly 30 points a game, over 9 rebounds, and more than 6 assists while shooting 53% from the field, 41% from 3, and 92% from the free throw line. That is elite basketball by any era's standards. Even today, those numbers would be insane. What makes it even more impressive is the fact Bird was dealing with serious back problems during parts of his career. Meanwhile, modern players operate in a league with more spacing, fewer physical defenses, and rules designed to help offensive stars score easier. That's why so many older fans were stunned hearing Ant question the skill level of that generation. And people really started bringing up the legendary moments that made Bird such a feared player. One of the most famous stories happened on February 14, 1986, against the Portland Trail Blazers. Before the game, Bird reportedly told people he was going to save his right hand for the Lakers and mostly shoot left-handed that night. Most players would struggle badly trying something like that. Bird went out there and dropped 47 points, 14 rebounds, and 11 assists anyway. Fans still talk about that performance like it was straight out of a video game because it sounded impossible. Yet Bird actually did it in a real NBA game. That's why many people felt Anthony Edwards underestimated who he was talking about. Larry Bird wasn't just skilled, he was one of the smartest and toughest competitors the sport has ever seen. His trash talk alone became legendary because he would literally tell defenders what he planned to do before doing it. One of the coldest examples came against Xavier McDaniel back in 1986. Bird pointed to a spot on the court and told him, "I'm going to stand right there and I'm going to shoot it right in your face." Then, seconds later, he ran to that exact spot, caught the ball, and hit the game winner anyway. That type of confidence is why Bird became such a feared name across the league. And people also started reminding everyone that Bird won 3 straight MVP awards during one of the most competitive eras in NBA history. Back then, the game was far more physical, defenses were tougher, and teams didn't even focus heavily on the three-point shot yet. Still, Bird dominated the league year after year. But here's where the situation got even more intense. Larry Bird wasn't even the first NBA legend to respond to Anthony Edwards. Other former stars had already spoken out before Bird finally joined the conversation. Some of those reactions were way harsher and way more personal than Bird's comments. That's what really turned this whole situation into a massive basketball debate online. Fans from different generations started arguing non-stop over whether modern players are actually more skilled or just benefiting from easier offensive rules and different styles of play. And once the older legends started responding one after another, the pressure around Ant's comments only got bigger. The craziest part about Anthony Edwards' comments is that he basically summoned basketball royalty to respond. Once the legends heard what he said, they didn't hold back at all. This wasn't just a few retired players feeling annoyed online. These were some of the biggest names in NBA history stepping in to defend their era. Magic Johnson wasted no time making his feelings clear. But instead of getting into some long argument, Magic pulled a savage move during an appearance on Byron Scott's Fast Break podcast. He didn't even mention Anthony Edwards by name. Fans instantly noticed it too. Magic basically brushed the whole thing off, like Ant hadn't earned the right to be part of that conversation yet. And honestly, when you look at Magic's career, you can understand why people took his response seriously. By the age of 32, Magic already had 5 championship rings and helped transform the NBA into a global sport alongside Larry Bird. So when he hinted that players should accomplish more before criticizing older generations, fans knew exactly what he meant. To a lot of former players, respect in the NBA was earned through championships, consistency, and surviving brutal competition year after year. That's why some people felt Anthony Edwards jumped into dangerous territory talking down on players who built the foundation of the league before he's even reached the top himself. But Magic's reaction was calm compared to Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah looked genuinely frustrated by the entire debate. Instead of only defending old school players, he started questioning how modern basketball conversations are shaped online. He posted on social media saying, "Propaganda works, so be careful what you choose to believe." That line instantly had fans debating everywhere. A lot of people saw Isaiah's message as a shot at the way younger fans sometimes overlook older eras because they didn't grow up watching them live. And Isaiah had every reason to defend that generation. The man was barely over 6 feet tall and still dominated against some of the toughest defenders basketball has ever seen. Back then, defenses were far more physical, hand-checking was allowed, and guards constantly got bumped, grabbed, and hit while attacking the rim. Yet Isaiah still became one of the greatest point guards ever. That's why many former players feel today's fans underestimate just how difficult the game used to be. Then Kevin Garnett jumped into the conversation and things got even more intense. KG looked like he was ready to suit up immediately just hearing the comments. On his podcast, he made it clear he believes many modern players would struggle badly in older NBA eras because of the physicality and pressure. KG also brought up something people rarely discuss anymore: efficiency of movement. He explained that older eras demanded quick decisions and smart basketball. Players couldn't spend 20 seconds dancing with the ball trying complicated dribble moves every possession. Coaches expected fast execution, and defenders punished mistakes hard. According to KG, if players over-dribbled or slowed the offense down too much back then, they weren't getting praised online with highlights. They were getting yelled at, benched, or hit with tough defense immediately. That style forced players to sharpen fundamentals and make every move count. And then Shaquille O'Neal entered the debate too. Once Shaq speaks on basketball, people listen because few players ever dominated the game physically the way he did. Shaq basically argued that the definition of skill changes depending on the era you grew up watching. He pointed out that modern basketball values shooting, spacing, and perimeter scoring more than ever. But older generations often measured skill through physical dominance, toughness, footwork, and the ability to finish through constant contact in the paint. Shaq made it sound like comparing eras without understanding those differences misses the bigger picture completely. That's why many fans thought Anthony Edwards' comments were way too broad. Saying only Michael Jordan had skill ignored countless legends who still influence today's NBA stars behind the scenes. Take Hakeem Olajuwon, for example. If older players supposedly lacked skill, then why have modern superstars spent huge amounts of money training with Hakeem during the offseason? Players like LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and Giannis Antetokounmpo all worked with him because they respected his footwork, balance, timing, and post moves. Hakeem's techniques became so legendary that elite players traveled to Houston just to learn from him directly. That alone says everything about how much today's stars value the knowledge from past generations. Even Kobe Bryant, one of the most dedicated students of basketball ever, studied Hakeem closely because he believed those old-school skills still mattered at the highest level. And once fans started revisiting Hakeem's numbers and highlights from the 1990s, the entire debate around Anthony Edwards' comments became even louder online. We're talking about Hakeem Olajuwon here, the only player in NBA history with more than 3,000 blocks and 2,000 steals in a career. That stat alone sounds unreal. You don't reach numbers numbers like that just because you're tall or athletic. That takes elite timing, insane reflexes, defensive instincts, and a basketball IQ that almost nobody has ever matched. And Hakeem wasn't only dominating on defense either. During the 1993-94 season, he pulled off one of the wildest accomplishments the league has ever seen. He won MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and Finals MVP, all in the same season. Think about how ridiculous that is for a second. He was considered the best offensive player and the best defensive player in basketball at the exact same time. That's why so many fans pushed back hard against Anthony Edwards' comments. Modern stars get praised for flashy step-back threes and highlight dribble moves, but Hakeem was destroying elite defenders with footwork so smooth, it still gets studied today. Hall of Fame centers looked completely lost trying to guard him in the post. Then on the other end, he was protecting the rim like a human wall. And Hakeem wasn't the only legend putting up crazy numbers back then either. Kevin McHale is another perfect example. Charles Barkley has openly said McHale was one of the toughest players he ever had to guard. And the stats explain why. McHale shot around 60% from the field while also knocking down free throws at an elite level for a big man. That's what makes this whole debate so interesting. A lot of younger fans hear older eras described like everybody was just standing around in the paint throwing elbows all game. But when you actually study the players, you realize many of them were way more skilled and versatile than people give them credit for. And the shooting conversation might be the biggest example of that. Today, people sometimes act like long-range shooting only became elite once Steph Curry arrived. But shooters like Mark Price and Craig Hodges were already deadly decades earlier. Mark Price especially was ahead of his time. The man shot over 40% from three in an era where defenders could hand-check constantly and make life miserable for guards. Imagine trying to line up a deep jumper while a defender is pushing, bumping, and leaning on you every possession with barely any whistle from the referees. That was normal basketball back then. Price also became one of the first members of the legendary 50-40-90 club after Larry Bird. That means elite efficiency from the field, from three, and from the free throw line all in the same season. Those numbers are difficult even in today's offense-heavy NBA. And here's another thing people forget. Older players often had to be more complete because the rules gave them fewer shortcuts. Back then, illegal defense rules changed the entire way basketball worked. Teams couldn't just load up zone defenses everywhere or constantly hide weak defenders off ball the way modern schemes sometimes allow. If your man beat you one-on-one, there usually wasn't instant help waiting under the rim to rescue the possession. Players had to survive isolation battles constantly. That meant your footwork, balance, defense, and ball handling all had to be sharp because there was nowhere to hide. That's why many former players laugh when people say older generations lacked skill. The environment was brutal, physical, and demanded precision every single night. And honestly, the Larry Bird three-point contest story perfectly captures the confidence from that era. Before the 1986 contest even started, Bird reportedly walked into the locker room full of the league's best shooters, looked around casually, and asked, "So who's coming in second?" Imagine saying that to a room packed with elite NBA players. The coldest part, he backed it up immediately. Bird went out there and won the whole contest while still wearing his warm-up jacket. That story became legendary because it showed how fearless and mentally tough those players were. The trash talk wasn't fake confidence. They truly believed nobody could stop them. But even Bird's moment sounds crazy compared to what Bernard King did on Christmas Day in 1984. King walked into Madison Square Garden and dropped 60 points without making a single three-pointer. Not one. And younger fans really have to understand how difficult scoring was back then. The paint was packed constantly, defenders were extremely physical, and there were no defensive 3-second violations creating easy driving lanes. Every trip near the rim turned into chaos. To score 60 points in that environment required way more than confidence. It took stamina, toughness, balance, footwork, and the ability to finish through non-stop contact possession after possession. That's why so many basketball legends took Anthony Edwards' comments personally, because they believe that era demanded a completely different level of mental and physical skill. And this is where the whole debate really starts getting uncomfortable for modern NBA fans. If today's players are supposedly way more skilled than older generations, then why are league-wide mid-range shooting percentages actually lower now than they were back in 1988? That stat catches a lot of people off guard. The truth is, many fans started connecting skill only to deep threes and flashy dribble moves. But older players mastered the mid-range game, which demanded precision, timing, footwork, and the ability to read defenders perfectly. That area of basketball wasn't just about shooting, it was about creating space with intelligence and control. That's why so many former players believe the mid-range shot became a lost art over time. And if people still doubt how dangerous older stars were under pressure, just look at Reggie Miller in 1995. The man scored 8 points in 9 seconds against the Knicks during the playoffs. Even today, that sequence feels unreal to watch. Moments like that weren't just hot shooting streaks. They showed composure, awareness, and the ability to stay calm in absolute chaos. A lot of players talk confidence now, but very few could survive pressure situations like that on the biggest stage. And once you start comparing records, the conversation gets even crazier. John Stockton's numbers almost look fake when you read them today. The man retired with 15,806 career assists and 3,265 steals, both NBA records that still seem nearly impossible to reach. To understand how insane that assist total is, imagine trying to average 10 assists every game for almost 2 decades straight while barely missing any games. That level of consistency sounds impossible in today's era of load management, injuries, and constant roster movement. That's another reason older fans get frustrated hearing players from past eras called unskilled. Their greatness wasn't only built on highlights, it was built on discipline, durability, timing, and basketball IQ over incredibly long careers. And toughness back then was on another level too. One of the wildest examples came during the 1988 NBA Finals, when Isaiah Thomas badly injured his ankle in Game 6. Most players today would probably be sidelined immediately after an injury that serious. Isaiah stayed on the court anyway and somehow scored 25 points in 1 quarter while barely able to move properly. That performance became legendary because it showed the mentality players needed to survive that era. Physical play was constant, and stars absorbed contact almost every possession. That environment forced players to become mentally tough in ways younger fans sometimes overlook today. And speaking of physical basketball, the infamous Jordan rules from the Detroit Pistons became one of the most talked about defensive systems ever. Their strategy focused heavily on stopping Michael Jordan with aggressive team defense and hard contact whenever he attacked the paint. That experience shaped Jordan into the player many consider the greatest ever. It wasn't just athleticism that made him dominant, it was his ability to handle relentless pressure, physical punishment, and nonstop defensive attention night after night. That's why some former players argue modern stars benefit from a much more offense-friendly league. Today's rules protect perimeter players far more than they did decades ago. Defenders have less freedom to use physical pressure, and offensive players get far more space to operate comfortably. And honestly, the biggest reason modern basketball looks more skilled to some fans might actually come down to rule changes more than talent differences. The NBA gradually adjusted the rules over the years to create faster offenses, higher scoring, and more exciting highlights for television audiences. One major turning point came when hand-checking restrictions became much stricter. In older eras, defenders could use their hands and body positioning to disrupt guards constantly. Ball handlers had to protect the dribble under heavy pressure almost every possession. That's why many older fans believe dribbling today appears easier, partly because offensive players are given more freedom of movement. Moves that might have been called carries or travels decades ago are often allowed now if they create exciting offense and rhythm plays. And whether people agree or disagree with that argument, there's no denying the game changed dramatically after the NBA shifted toward creating more scoring opportunities. In 2004, rule adjustments focused heavily on opening the floor, speeding up offenses, and making perimeter stars easier to market globally. The result was a faster, flashier version of basketball that helped explode the league's popularity even more. But at the same time, it also created non-stop debates between generations about whether players today are truly more skilled or simply benefiting from a completely different set of rules. And this is the part of the debate that really gets fans fired up. A lot of former players believe modern stars benefit massively from rules designed to favor offense. When perimeter defenders can barely touch ball handlers and flashy dribble moves get more freedom, of course the game is going to look smoother and more explosive on highlights. But imagine dropping 1986 Larry Bird straight into today's NBA system for a second. Seriously, think about that matchup. You're talking about a player who already shot 50% from the field, 40% from three, and 90% from the free throw line while dealing with constant contact, physical defense, and checking every night. Now picture Bird in a modern offense with unlimited spacing, faster pace, and permission to launch double-digit threes every game. Fans honestly believe he would put up ridiculous numbers in today's league. We're talking huge scoring nights, triple-doubles everywhere, and non-stop trash talk while doing it. That's why older fans keep saying the real difference between eras may not be athleticism at all. The biggest gap could actually be fundamentals. Players from older generations were forced to master footwork, balance, timing, passing angles, and mid-range scoring because the game demanded it every possession. Meanwhile, modern athletes now have access to advanced training staffs, recovery programs, nutrition plans, cryotherapy, sports science, and technology older players never dreamed about. Yet despite all those advantages, many coaches still complain that younger players rely too heavily on highlights and three-point shooting instead of mastering every part of the game. That's where names like Bernard King keep getting brought up. King became one of the most unstoppable scorers ever without modern spacing, advanced shoes, or offense-friendly rules. He attacked packed defenses constantly and still dominated through skill, toughness, and precision. A lot of former players feel today's version of basketball is built more for entertainment and fast-paced scoring than survival. Older eras were slower, rougher, and much more physical. Players had to fight through contact, crowded paint defenses, and non-stop pressure just to stay effective. That's why many people viewed Anthony Edwards' comments as disrespectful rather than just bold. To them, it sounded like criticizing the very generations that built the league into what it is today. At the same time, most fans agree Anthony Edwards is still an incredible talent. Nobody questions his athleticism, explosiveness, or star potential. The guy can take over games, create viral highlights instantly, and has all the tools to become one of the NBA's biggest faces in the future. But critics argue there's a huge difference between raw talent and proving yourself over time with championships, consistency, efficiency, and legendary accomplishments. That's the standard older generations keep measuring against. And that's why so many people brought up records from players like Larry Bird, Hakeem Olajuwon, Magic Johnson, John Stockton, and others during this entire debate. Those players didn't just have flashy moments, they built careers filled with championships, MVPs, historic stats, and accomplishments that still feel untouchable decades later. So when Anthony Edwards dismissed older eras so casually, many fans felt he underestimated just how difficult basketball used to be. Because whether people prefer modern basketball or old-school basketball, one thing is undeniable. Today's stars are still learning from the legends who came before them. That's why this conversation exploded the way it did online. For a lot of basketball fans, respect between generations matters just as much as talent itself. And until Anthony Edwards builds a resume packed with championships, MVPs, and historic accomplishments of his own, critics believe comparisons to all-time legends will always bring heavy backlash.